What's up, gun nuts? It's Ferrari Steve, and today I'm going to show you how to field strip a Ruger 22-45 Lite. First, let's eject the magazine, do a quick safety check, walk the slide back, visually and manually inspect, and the gun is safe. So you may have already watched my Ruger Mark I, or some call it the Ruger Standard, field strip video, and you'll see a lot of similarities between that gun and its descendant, the Ruger 22-45 Lite. And the 22-45 Lite is essentially a Ruger Mark III, where the grip angle has been modified to look more like a 1911. And interestingly enough, 1911 grips will, or most of them will work on a Ruger 22-45 Lite, or any Ruger 22-45 for that matter. There are a few other differences which we can talk about maybe, but field stripping, it has a few different things you have to do on the Mark IIIs, and I include the 22-45 Lite as a Mark III, even though technically some could argue it's not. But anyway, a lot of similarities. So we've already checked that the gun is clear, and in most cases when I do these videos, I put the magazine aside and really don't worry about it, but you're going to need this magazine back because you cannot dry fire a Mark III without the magazine in. Unless you modify something, which if you keep watching these videos, you're going to see me review something that allows you to dry fire it without the magazine in, just like you can with some of the earlier versions. But anyway, let's get going. So let's remove the threaded barrel protector. And I remove that only because technically for a field strip I'd be cleaning this, and it's easy to do, so why not? There's a little washer as well, so put that aside. We'll put all our parts over here. Now we'll keep this handy. You're going to want to put it back in, and you need to dry fire the pistol. So point it in the safe direction, we know that it's clear, and relieve the spring pressure by dry firing the pistol. Now you can eject the magazine again, now that you've got it, you've got the pressure taken off of the spring, and now we're ready to start really getting moving. Okay, so the trickiest part for a lot of people is getting this first little lever pulled out. And you'll see I can do that with my fingernails, but just in case you let's make sure I get that back in there. Just in case you don't have the hand strength to do that, I really recommend these little pistol pals. It's by gunsmithertools.com. You can buy them also at Tandem Cross or on Amazon. And this little wire here really makes life easy. Just pulls it out. You can also do it with a paper clip, but I like this for another reason. The next step is to pull this down and try to get it out. So I could probably pull that down. A lot of times I'll put my thumb here or lay the gun down like this and grab and pull. But another great feature about this Gunsmither Tools, and I use this in my Ruger Mark I breakdown video as well, you can just put it up top here and press down there, and makes it really easy to get that out. So one of my rules, if you watch my videos, is never force anything on a gun. Boy, the Ruger Mark series makes me come closest to breaking that rule, but with the Gunsmither Tools Pistol Pal, life's a little bit easier with these. So I highly recommend these. These are like $10, so you should definitely get one if you've got a Ruger. All right, next, let's see if the bolt just comes out on its own. Oh, it did. Now, if it wasn't that easy, it's really just about shaking it and moving it and pulling it, maybe pulling the trigger a couple times, because the hammer sometimes will get kind of stuck up and catch that bolt as you try to pull it out. But if you're really lucky, the bolt should just pull out. If it didn't pull out, super easy for you though. Just kind of wiggle, shake, tap, whatever. Do a do a little rain dance, and it will come out. All right. So our next step is to get the frame off of the barrel. Now, I've seen some videos where people say, oh, use a mallet or a hammer. No, you don't need to. This is a really, really new gun. We've only actually had it out and fired it once, so it's only got a few hundred rounds through it. I find it easiest, especially if you've got something soft and spongy like this Tech Mat, just to put it down and make sure you've got this pressed against something that's firm but not going to mar it, and then just push. And it's just that simple. And you hear it kind of pop, and where it's releasing is right here and here. And there. That's all your pieces. Now, getting it back together is actually a little bit trickier than pulling it apart. Pulling it apart's not that rough. And I know a lot of people avoid buying these guns because they think they're hard to take apart and maintain, and they're really not. Now, you can clean the extractor. Here's the extractor. If you want, you can pull that out pretty simply with this little pin inside here. It slides down in here and presses there, and presses that spring, and you can pull the extractor out. The extractors really need to be maintained on a Ruger, but I'm not going to take that out. It's relatively simple if you have the right tool to get it out of there, but technically for a field strip, it's how far can you take it down without tools. I know I used a tool and cheated, but I could have got away without it. So let's put it back together in the reverse order, right? Let's get the frame back on and just line it up here, right? You're looking for this little hook to go from the frame into the slide. Line it up, and then do the opposite. Put it nose down and just press down. You don't get that nice click as it reinserts, but you want to make sure that the barrel extends past the frame on the back here. Once you've got it extended there, you can sit there and press all day long. You're not going to get it past there farther. So just once you've got it almost flush or maybe a little bit past the back end of the frame, then you got the barrel back on the right place. You can test it with the next step when you put the bolt in, and it helps to have it up the right way. When you put the bolt back in, good, something went wrong. Now you'll notice we got stuck there. Just reach inside and press down the hammer to clear the way, and the bolt should just slide right in. Should, but didn't. Okay, good. I like it when things go wrong on the video because I can show you some of the tricks. One of the tricks to do when you've got a Mark III and things are going wrong is try just pulling the trigger and then try it again. So tap, 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 pull the trigger, and there we go. So sometimes the trigger will move some of the internals enough to allow you to reassemble the gun. So when in doubt, the first trick when you're reassembling it and things go wrong, just try pulling the trigger. Again, make sure it's pointed in a safe direction. I know we've just taken it apart and we know it's not loaded, but one of the rules is always have the gun pointed in a safe direction. And so I never pull the trigger unless that's the case. Now, line this up and have a look down there. Make sure you can see all the way down through that hole. When you press the bolt in, it may not sit there on its own. That's okay. Press it in and make sure you can see all the way down there and that you think this pin would be able to fit through that hole all the way. That means you've got that slide, or the barrel, excuse me, back on the frame properly. So our next step is to try and put this in. Now this is really the tricky part. And a lot of people have some tricks and tips for how to do it, but really the big problem is generally inside there. Let's see if I can shake it out there. The little hammer strut. It's a little doohickey that swings. And that causes all the problems when people are trying to put it back together. There it is, kind of peeking out right there. See that? So you got to make sure that's down and out of the way when you put this spring assembly back in. So kind of make sure it's out of the way. Make sure it doesn't get caught on this hooked portion here. So make sure it's down and out of the way. Reinsert this, and then try to just click this up all the way into place. There we go. Now the first thing people will try to do is just try to close it. And oh no, it pulls out. And that's a problem. Now the next thing they're going to want to do is close this without having that hammer strut lined up properly. That hammer strut rides right here in this groove. Let me pull it out. I'll show you again. That hammer strut rides right here inside this groove and presses here to compress the spring or to get pressure from the spring. So you got to make sure you don't get it hooked in here. You want that hammer strut to line up right in this channel. So hammer strut's out of the way. Push this back up in it. And again, if you have any problem going, it's because that bolt maybe have slid back. So just press it in and make sure you can click it all the way up and it stays exposed. But if you try to pull it, it's going to come down. We'll deal with that in a second. Look inside, make sure that hammer strut is down, and now you kind of tip it upwards, and you'll hear that tick. Let's see if I can do that again. Hear that tick? If it is gummed up, it might not, but if it's lubricated properly, you'll hear that tick. And now it's resting, see right here on the corner. When you close this, it's going to line up properly with there. However, it's pulling. Here's the trick. Grab the magazine, reinsert it, point the gun upward, make sure that's safe, pull the trigger. Again, that's that trick, right? Pull the trigger. And now, when I try to close this, look at that. This doesn't pop down. You kind of got to do all these things at once with your hammer struts in the right place, magazines in, pull back, and then close this down. At this point, you should be able to push this in. And sometimes it's a little tricky, so I actually like to pull out the magazine again at this point. It makes it easier to press this in. Now you'll notice I've got a little bit of spring tension. That's what I want. If I try to close this, and this is similar to the Mark I if you see my video there, if I close this and it just goes click into place with no spring pressure trying to pull it back out, it's in the wrong spot. But I know that now it's pushed in. I can close this little tab, and I'm good to go. Do a function test. When I pull that without the magazine in, it should just release. If I try to dry fire it, oh no, it doesn't work. That's because you need to have the magazine in order to dry fire it. So put the magazine back in. Hey, it worked. Well, I didn't have the magazine in all the way. There we go. Now, with the magazine in, it will lock, so then you have to release the slide and then dry fire it. Slide, bolt. I'm getting my guns confused this morning. Good. And there we go. Now all you gotta do is put your threaded barrel protector back on, and you are ready to rock. So there you have it. That is how you field strip a Ruger 2245 Lite. Remember the trick, pull that trigger if you're having some trouble, right? Getting that bolt out. Sometimes pulling the trigger will work, sometimes wiggling will work, and when you're putting it back together, again, when to have the magazine in versus when to have the magazine out is really important. So just follow those tips, and it obviously is a lot easier than I think some people make it out to be. This is Ferrari Steve, thanking you for watching. Remember, get out there, use your guns, practice, 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 so that the first time you have to pull this trigger, it's not the first time you have pulled that trigger. Si vis pacem parabellum, and stay safe out there.